Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie and I've got some guests lined up with me today and possibly some more additions later on, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But I've got Malcolm Ginsberg's come back again. He was here last week. Aviation and business travel guru, editor of Business Travel News, which comes out weekly, and I quite like it. And if Malcolm, if it's okay with you, it doesn't have to be a fixed thing, but if you're around on Wednesdays, it'd be quite nice to always have a little aviation section, because so much goes on in the aviation world that it'd be nice to spend sort of 5 minutes at least at the start and just talk about what's happening there. I've also got Michael Constantine with me, who is from the National Civil War Centre in Newark, and this is a centre, a £5.4 million renovation build, if you like, up in Newark-on-Trent, which will be opening later this year, or in the spring at least, and we'll get some more detail on that in a moment. And also joining us whenever we do something that's historic or archaeology based, I've got Thomas Dowson back again, who is an archaeology blogger. In fact, his blog is archaeology-travel.com, so that tells you all you need to know about the stuff that he writes about. So I know he was interested in the National Civil War Centre, so I'm pleased to have him here with us. The other thing I was going to do is that it just so happens that this week coincides with events in Helsinki, in Finland. They have every year the Nordic Travel Fair in Helsinki, and this is the second year that they've gone big on social media by inviting a bunch of international travel bloggers to Finland, and the idea is that they get there early, a week or so early, and travel around, and then move down to Helsinki for the travel show itself and the conference there. They've been tweeting. If you want to look for them and their activities, if you look for hashtag NBE, Nordic Blogger Experience, it stands for NBE Finland, all one word, then it's worth having a look, because there's some fabulous photographs. Shane Dallas, who's been on the Hangout before, has been taking some great photographs, and so has Lawrence Nora of the Aurora Borealis. And one or two others have been taking some amazing photographs. Michael Turtle took a brilliant Instagram of the airport, which looks just freezing as he flew into Finland. It just looks blue. So worth taking a look and worth seeing their activities. I'm just inviting a bunch of them that I know are up there at the moment to the Hangout, and if they show up, then that'll be fine. But I suspect they probably won't, and the reason I say that is because let me find this, let me share that page with you if I can. That's the wrong one, but it's on the right window here. Where are we? That one there. This is the release about it. There's 40 international bloggers blogging in 14 languages. Sorry, 40 blogs in 14 languages. Chinese, English, Dutch, Japanese, Korean, Italian, French, Spanish, 47 of them altogether, and it goes into the figures of what we did last year. I was there last year, so I know that at the moment they are fairly tied up, and I'm just hoping that one of them at least might be able to join us just for a moment to tell us what's going on and what they're doing. But if I'm right, based on last year's program, I suspect that Inna, who runs this event, is probably even now getting them onto a bus to take them out to the Finnish Sauna Society's headquarters, where they've got a range of traditional saunas, so they'll all be having fun out there this evening. So I'm not expecting them to join us, but if they do, that's what that will be about. And there were a couple of images, by the way. Here's one of them of what they've been up to. This was taken a couple of hours ago, and there's also That's Shane Dallas, I can see there, and I think that's Becky Enright there. And this is a sound check for the keynote speech. So I don't know whether that was something they were doing this afternoon or whether it's something they're preparing for tomorrow. So you can see that they're busy and they probably won't be able to join us, but good luck to them anyway. Okay, let's get back to where we are. Malcolm, you since last week you've actually been on one of the A350s that we were talking about. Is that right?
Yep, I flew on the A350 out of Heathrow, out of what's called the VIP terminal, the Queen's terminal, the actual one Her Majesty uses, and we were 2 hours in the air flying over Filton, where the part of the aircraft is built, and Ralton in Chester, where the wings are built. It was a very interesting flight. It was an interesting day all round.
And what did you think of the airplane?
The aeroplane is certainly impressive, and Airbus are lucky on two fronts. First of all, having put the thing back a little bit, they've had a very, very smooth run up. There's been none of this nonsense we had with the 787, where they rolled out a kit plane and pretended it was the real thing, since scrapped. This time it was the real thing, on time, and it's an impressive aircraft. It's not quite as wide as a 777, just 3 inches narrower, but it's a foot wider than the 330. And the way they've done it, Qatar Airways, is quite interesting. It's 1-2-1 up front. There's no central boxes for the...
Talking about a part of the plane that we're never going to get to, but anyway.
Well, occasionally I'm allowed up there, and I certainly was on this occasion. And the back of the aircraft is 333. Now it looks and it is very comfortable. The disadvantage is that the person by the window has to climb out over 2 other people on a long haul flight. I actually think they will be better off socially and more comfortable if they went 2-5-2. Now the guy in the middle has still got to climb out over 2 other people, but he can climb out either side, so you have to decide on what sort of person you want to climb over. This is a television thing.
But this will be down to airlines. I mean, they can arrange their seating as they want. So different airlines may well take your advice on board and set it up. The other thing about this generation of aircraft is the atmosphere, pressurized to 6,000 feet. Did it feel nice and?
It's impossible to tell on the short flight, but I must say that it appears to be very much more comfortable. There's much bigger windows. They're not quite as big as the 787, but that doesn't really matter. And they've also got this sort of special tinting on it, so it doesn't. All in all, it's a very nice aircraft. And having flown on a DC-10, on whose tie I've got on today, not that long ago, 40 years ago, one of the first of the wide bodies, the DC-10, they've come a very long way indeed.
Okay. Just a little piece of housekeeping here. If you want to, you can ask questions using the Q&A app, which is that button on the top right-hand corner. Ron Marder has done exactly that, and one of his questions is someone from the museum taking part in this hangout? And the answer is yes, Ron. He's sitting there in the middle. It's Michael waving his hand, and we will be getting onto that in just a moment. We just want to talk about aviation quickly first. The A350, I'm guessing, because of the materials it's using, like the Dreamliner, has those big bendy flappy wings?
Yes, it's got the big bendy flappy wings there, and probably go out 10 or 12 feet. It's all very impressive. It's 53% titanium, we're told, and all sorts of other bits and pieces that make it up. So
and that doesn't make you feel or anybody else feel particularly nervous or anxious. I remember when the Dreamliner first took off on its maiden flight, and you suddenly got the impression these things were bending right up. In fact, as you looked across from the chase planes across the aircraft, the wing tips were above the fuselage, and I was thinking, oh God, people are going to be really nervous flying on something like that, aren't they? So,
well, I don't know about that, but I sat in the back of the 380 on its maiden flight. By the way, I was in the back on that occasion. Was in the front, and you could see the wing go up about 12 feet. I wasn't worried because that's the way it's designed. So yeah, it is a flexi wing. I'll keep away from that because we've got the 777X coming along, where the wing will actually fold up as if it's going on an aircraft carrier.
Grief. Okay. Okay. So quickly, let's finish off with aviation. Departures and arrivals. Departures. Cyprus Airways no longer.
Yeah. First of all, Cyprus Airways have gone. Fascinating tale, because in September they sold for $30 million their slots out of Heathrow. Somebody's got 30 million, and off they trotted to Stansted. But today's release, and there's no follow-up from it as yet, from another Greek airline, says they have somehow managed to procure slots at Heathrow. So what's happened is somebody's picked up all the pieces.
Is this
the other
Aegean,
one,
somebody?
I'm sorry?
Is this Aegean or?
Aegean, yeah. Aegean's picked up all the pieces, or some of them. So I don't think anybody other than the staff and of course the creditors. Staff will get the jobs. There's no problem. They're putting 4 more aircraft into Larnaca, which I think is all Aegean, all that Cyprus Airways ever did. So they're actually better off, but they haven't got the name attached. The other interesting one, of course, is Vietnam Airways, who are coming into Heathrow. Now, they were at Gatwick. They made a big song and dance about it, and Gatwick were very excited. And there was a real coup, and there was a sense at Heathrow on Monday that, ha-ha, we've won. Somehow, they managed to get slots, and they got them for free, because there is a bilateral between the two countries, and there is actually a waiting list for slots. And in fact, the slots have worked out quite well. I'm told they're about 6 o'clock inbound, and maybe about noon lunchtime outbound. It's not perfect, but it works out for them.
Vietnam's becoming quite a destination, a leisure destination now, and that'll go a long way to supporting that. I'm just coming back to Greece and Cyprus for a minute. There's also, for the first time, the opportunity to fly out to the Greek islands from London City. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I happen to be in the Greek islands, and if anybody wants to look at Business Travel News, you'll see a picture personally taken of me of this airport, which actually takes up about a third of the island from what I can work out. But you'll be able to go on the Embraer, very nice, very comfortable aircraft, straight into Tyre. So you have to be a bit careful there, where the name of the place that you're going to. But I think it's going to be a very pleasant route in the summer.
Perfect. Well, I mention it because I know that Thomas will be planning his next visit to the Mediterranean and the archaeological hotspots there. So that'll be a great asset for him. Okay, let's move on. Malcolm, if you want to, do hang around, but if you don't want to, then disappear.
I'm going to move on because I've got this week's issue to start work on Wednesday. But happy to oblige, and we'll look forward to next week and see what. There's always things happening in aviation.
Exactly. That's my thinking too. Good to see you. Okay, so as Ron was asking, is there somebody from the museum, the new National Civil War Centre in Newark here? And there certainly is. We've got Michael Constantine, who is actually, Michael, what's your job description? You're business manager, is that right, of the project?
Yeah, we've got a very long job title, but basically I'll be the manager of the National Civil War Centre when we finish building it. Right.
Okay. What's the state of play? It's a project that's been in construction for the last how many years? Several years.
Well, in terms of construction boots on site, we've been on site for about 16 months now. But then in terms of the gestation of the project, because it's a Heritage Lottery funded project and these things do take time to stitch together in terms of funding packages, it's been that kind of 5-6 years in the making to get to this point. Where we're at the point where we've taken the building to bits and it's all coming back together, ready to open in around that kind of 10 to 12 weeks time. So we've got a large launch event planned for the early May bank holiday here in the UK, and that's when we're looking to be open for.
Excellent. Let's talk about the building in a moment, but just to sort of get back to the basics. Is this the first, as it were, dedicated museum centre covering the Civil War period, which actually was quite a long series of periods, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is the first place that's doing the whole of the British Civil Wars. What you usually get is places such as Worcester or Newbury where they've got a battle, so they'll want to contextualise the Battle of Worcester or the Battle of Pennant Bridge in saying it was part of the English Civil Wars. Now, Newark was at the heart of the English Civil Wars. It was besieged 3 times, but rather than setting it kind of rather parochially in that period, is saying this is part of a far larger sweep of history. So it's been renamed the British Civil Wars effectively because it starts in Scotland and finishes in Ireland, and the English bit is one of the chunks in the middle. So we will start with the Bishops' Wars in Scotland and finish off in Ireland. So it's that period of history which does last thick end of 20 years. Rather than just the English bit in the middle.
And it's kind of broken up as well, because there are periods of activity, war activity, and then long periods in between.
Yes, I mean the wars are an expensive business, and you can't keep soldiers in the field unless they're supplied, usually with food and money. So they usually finish off for the winter, and it's very rare that they keep going all the way through. And there are periods of peace. The Second English Civil War is essentially a revolt where the Scots pile in on the royalist side afterwards. So it's a very complex series of conflicts which we start at one end, finish at the other, and we attempt to take people through that spread of history. And when you're talking about a series of religious wars, when you're in a country which isn't particularly religious at the moment, trying to explain, as we were for the Radio 4 religious program, what's the difference between Catholics and Protestants and why were they killing each other? That's a really good question when you're living in almost a secular society. So it is setting that kind of context that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, it is quite a hard thing for a lot of people to take on board in this secular age, as you say. Although, as events turn out in Paris and elsewhere, it's become much more obvious the breakdown between various religious groups. Just thinking about that history, let me just ask a question again from Ron Marder, who says, for those unfamiliar with British history, Ron, by the way, is an American, what are recommended introductory resources? He says he's giving a hat tip to the British History podcast, BritishHistoryPodcast.com, which obviously he's found. But do you have any other favourites? This might be one for you as well, Thomas. Do you have any favourite resources for checking up the history of the Civil War in this case?
I mean, one of our great starting points is there was a project called the British Civil War Project. So if you just Google BCW, that, as it says on the tin, is the British Civil Wars, and it does do them in the chronological order, and it does take you through all of the elements you need, really.
Excellent. Okay, let's get to Newark itself. Why Newark? You were talking before about how there have been other sites around the UK that have some kind of a museum or artifacts or whatever it may be that are sort of locally based, relevant to battles and the like. Is Newark any different in that sense?
Newark is different in that it doesn't have that huge major battle. It doesn't have the Marston Moor or the Battle of Worcester, but what it does have is the town is staunchly royalist and besieged 3 times. The final siege is full encirclement, fortification around the town, 16,000 troops besieging it, but it doesn't come to a bloody end because Charles I moves from Oxford to surrender to the Scots outside Newark, and part of the deal that the Scots do with him in terms of accepting his surrender is he has to instruct the town to surrender so that they don't have to take it by storm, which is rather pleasant because it would have been tremendously horrible. So why Newark and not anywhere else is that Newark is unusual in that the civic society continues throughout the Civil War period. A lot of the parish registers and the town halls don't keep records during this period because they don't want to be seen as to which side they were on, because if they end up being on the wrong side, it's going to be bad for them. However, Newark has got almost a full record, and when these were discovered in one of our archives, there are 5 boxes of papers discovered. It wasn't quite the tax return, but it was all the receipts that went alongside them. So whilst we can't kind of anticipate what it would be like to fight in the Civil War because we haven't been in a hand-to-hand combat battle, but we can anticipate what it'd feel like to have soldiers dropped into your house and you have to deal with them, because if a soldier died in your house, you would have to pay for their funeral, and then you would claim it back from the council. And we have the records of this happening, as this happens during, people dying of plague and all the horrible diseases you get in the 17th century town that's under siege. So what we could take is that kind of huge span of history, which is, interesting and spectacular, and then personalise it in a real place. And because Newark, partly due to the civil wars, didn't develop, and there wasn't huge demolitions and redevelopment during the 18th and 19th centuries, it's still a compact town which has got an awful lot of the built environment, still has these historic buildings in it. So you can go to the governor's house, which is a modest timber frame building where Charles, King Charles was in Newark numerous times and famously argued with his nephew Prince Rupert and shed tears from the windows Rupert rides out of the town, and all those kinds of stories we can tell, which we have been told, but we can tell them in a modern way through augmented reality town trails, through cinema within the National Civil War Centre. So it's not that traditional dusty museum environment. It is what is the story and how are we telling it, and what objects support that story, rather than here are some objects and this is why they were important, because my view is those days are done. It's that how do we engage people in history, and it's in a different way.
What a fantastic find! The boxes with the with all that paperwork in them. I could see Thomas's ears pricking up there, because I think, as we all recognise, actually it is those dusty, dry accounts, literally accounts, that quite often give the biggest and best clues to what was actually happening in real people's lives.
Yes, and it was, and we can identify with individuals whose job was, whilst plague was breaking out in Newark, to go around and give poor relief to them, so to stop them up in their houses and provide supplies to them. And for this one chap, it then happens in his own house, and virtually his whole family is wiped out. Whilst he is the person who goes around stopping other people from spreading plague, it still ends up in his house because it knows no barriers. We have the tale of Hercules Clay, who writes diaries throughout the period, but yet he dreams of his house being blown up during a siege 3 times. He takes this as a hint, well done, moves his family out, and within 2 or 3 nights his house is destroyed during the night. And again, it's that kind of terror weapons. They weren't bombarding the town during the daytime, they just bombarded it for an hour from midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning as that kind of those kind of terror weapons. It was entirely random shell fire, because we were sitting there thinking, from this hill where we knew they fired cannons, could they hit the town? And by the time we got one of our volunteers, who's an ex-RAF squadron leader, so he knows all his ballistics, he went through he provided us with a live Google Earth map of this is how the shell fires. And if you got the right size gun, you could overshoot Newark by 8 miles. So you could literally sit on top of this hill and pick off the chimney pots in Newark during the daytime, but they didn't. They bombarded in the darkness for an hour in the middle of the night.
Thomas, is this a rich period for you?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting period. What I find amazing is that it's 2015, and yet there isn't a museum already dedicated to this period of British history, because it is such a crucial part of British history. So my thought is it's going to be quite a popular museum.
Let's now turn to the building itself, because you've got yourselves a building from the period, a building which was, I think, a grammar school. Is that right? A Tudor grammar school, Michael?
Yes, the core of the building is this Tudor Hall. We call it the Tudor Hall. It was built as a school in 1529, so it was there. It was probably around the third or fourth best building in Newark during the Civil War period. On contemporary lithographs, it is clearly identifiable. It's a huge chimney stack. It towered above. The church is enormous, the castle is enormous, but then you're talking about what is the next best building. The Tudor Hall was probably around that. It was built as a grammar school by Thomas Magnus, so it was there, and it was a school from 1529 through to around 1910. So it was never that kind of building where it was used for domestic or lived in as a house. However, due to kind of the lack of planning constraints during the Georgian period, the schoolmaster decided that he wanted a new house. So in front of this Georgian It's in front of this Tudor hall. He built a 4-storey Georgian brick-built building, which fronts onto the street. And then during the Victorian period, rather than kind of sending children off for transportation or putting them in prison, they thought a better way of locking up and tidying them off the street was to send everyone to school. So during that period, the school expands massively, and it outgrows the site, so the school moves within Newark, and it becomes the town's municipal museum around the period of the First World War.
Now, I've got somewhere here, I don't know if you can see it yet. This is, let me just...
A work in progress.
Work in progress. This is from your website, which again, we'll put the details of that up in the show notes. But essentially, it is what is the URL for your website? It's
nationalcivilwarcenter.com.
Yeah, as you would expect, all one word .com. Yes, you can see some of the roof here and the side of the building in that small insert there. It looks like you've had to do an awful lot of work on this. You've had to literally cover the whole building and pretty much strip it down to literally the bare wood.
Yeah, I mean the Tudor building has had, as you'd expect, it's 500 years old, so it's had periods of restoration. But this the work inside the structure of the Tudor roof is, a once in a 500-year refurbishment project. It is. We've found tremendous degrees of rot within the Tudor building. It's not the kind of standard Tudor frame where the wood up goes down. It's it's a substantial stone building with this very heavyweight Tudor roof on top of it. So that's having its probably once in 500-year restoration. The Georgian building at the front, that's about 200 years old. By the time we'd explored it and exposed everything, it's been refloored right the way throughout, so the shell has been stabilized and then everything else inside is new. The Victorian building, most people say that the Georgians and the Victorians built fantastic buildings. Now they built to the budget that they had at the time, and that Victorian building was on 3 layers of bricks with no cement in it, so that's been completely underpinned and new floors throughout. So it is that kind of thing that the Heritage Lottery Fund do and fund very well, which is that whole building refurbishment. And then what we're doing is which is why we're calling it a centre, is the National Civil War Centre then uses those spaces and uses the objects to tell stories about the Civil War and why you can see it in Newark. The kind of real places, real people telling real stories in a real place is Newark. So, and that's the fit out that we're going to be undertaking starting in about 2 to 3 weeks.
And how are you going to do that? To take us through, because as we've already described, it's a complex tale to tell. This is a series of engagements that took place over an extended period, and there were floating alliances and allegiances. When for example, on the outskirts of Newark, King Charles, as you say, surrendered to the Scots. In fact, it was more a kind of he wanted to join their team. They had a Presbyterian army there, and he was hoping that they might support his cause. And of course, they didn't, and handed him over to Cromwell. So these things were floating. How are you doing all of that in the space of one building?
What we use every kind of tool in the toolbox, to pardon the phrase, which is there will be a limited amount of text on the walls because people will be in that leisure mode. So if people will come in, be wanting to be entertained, so it's that usual fewer than 200 words in each section. If you want to explore it further, there will be digital devices, so you'll be able to surf through those and text and video about the different aspects of it. And then what we will have is, for those people that really want to dig deep, we'll have digging deeper points, so you'll be able to look at the religion, finances, Scotland, Ireland, overseas, all those kind of elements which go throughout the story. So as you say, Charles comes up to surrender to the Scots outside Newark. He's wanting to turn them onto his side. They would basically agree to that if he signs the covenant. However, because he's got severe Catholic tendencies, he's not going to sign the Presbyterian covenant. The whole war starts with him imposing, bishops and incense in the church in Scotland back in 1639. So he decides, he tries to play it out. It doesn't work, and then we come back to the money side of it. So what you find out is that the Scots give him up, stroke, surrender him to the English, or some people look at it, sell him to the English in order for making sure that the English Parliament pays off their debt to the Scots, because the Scots are there because the English Parliament are paying them to be there.
Now, how do I, if I don't know that, and I come along in May when you open to the Civil War Centre, you say you can drill down into these things. How do I do that? How do I find that? And how does it keep me interested?
Well, it's in that kind of storytelling style which I've just articulated. So what you'll have is you'll have those basic kind of key kind of facts and nuances on the wall, and then there will be the kind of iPad type devices there, which you'll be able to have surf through if you're into the digital side of it. If you're into the kind of the more paper and word side of it, then there will be these. If you imagine coloured chopping boards, with two sides of A4 and images on it, then you'll be able to follow those around. So if you're interested in the money side of it, the originalist side of it, you'll be able to follow those around the galleries to be able to explore those. And then the different interactors that we've got will be able to then take you off and go about the gunnery, the arms and armour, and so you can almost feel history as well as those stories that we're telling.
So you're in your mind's eye, you have particular visitors, families, school kids, older people. Do you have a sense of how you're going to appeal to all of them?
Yes, I mean that's what without making it too. Without making it blamongy, each person who
I like blamongy. That's a good word.
It's a kind of spongy, fluffy word. Is that the Civil War period is essentially on the national curriculum. Now, so we will be covering off that schools element. Most people did not study the Civil War at school unless you had a particular local history. So people who knew it did it, people in Worcester did it. I've met people from elsewhere, Preston, for example, where there's a battle. They will have done it. I didn't do it at school. Most history graduates we meet have not done it. So those people who are now parents and grandparents will be having children who will be asking about the Civil War and will have no idea about it. One of the things that you said about us not having a Civil War centre is, why haven't we had one before? And as one of our academic panel said, it was been in nobody's interestingly until now, to kind of say, okay, that happened 300 years ago. And now, we can almost think we can talk about the time when a king was executed, when Christmas was banned. We can talk about those things now, and we will be able to meet the needs of all those different audience segments as we go through. So we've got the words on the wall, we've got the digging deeper bits, we've got the objects, we've got the things where you can try on the armour, as well as the augmented reality town trail. So instead of having a paper trail, which there will be one for me because I don't have a smartphone because I'm that in the dark ages, you will be able to go around there is a trail around the town, but you will be able to do one on a smart device, which will be able to kind of give you the links to the trailer as soon as it's published within the next 2 weeks, which takes that kind of a film in a museum and makes it Hollywood, because the stories which we've got are such widescreen. And we have that cinema and theatre experience within the Civil War Centre as well. So we have 6 films showing those, Charles's quarrel with Rupert, the execution of Charles, the local, the relief of Newark during the Second Siege. Those kind of widescreen stories will be able to be seen within the Civil War Centre.
Thomas, historic museums and visitor centres better than most. Does this all sound good to you? I rather like the idea of being able to take the essential story from inside the building outside into the town where the settings are.
Yeah, I think that sounds really exciting. I'm glad you explained it, because you mentioned it earlier and I was going to come back and ask you to explain it a bit more. Because one of the things where you do find the Civil War dealt with at historic sites in England is it's usually just battlefields, and usually all what you get are reenactments of battles, which for a lot of people are quite fun, and they can be interesting to watch. But there is so much more to the Civil War than just a couple of battles. You mentioned the whole finances stuff, the religion. So I think that's going to be quite exciting, the way in which you bring in all these different elements. Because certain sites, and I won't label the sites, who looks after them, really do just deal with the battle, a specific battle. and often you can visit the battlefield and you can come away without having that battle contextualized, and people are none the wiser as to why that battle took place, where it did, when it did, between who it did, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's going to be really exciting. But for a curator, that must have been quite a challenge, quite a wonderful challenge. I mean that in a good way, to bring all that stuff. And you're describing, using iPads and all the technology that we have available now. Oh, that must have been a museum curator's dream to be able to tell the story for the first time at this point in time with all that technology.
Well, it is, but then it's about how do you tell the story. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So it's that kind of element of using the technology, but only to tell something that's real. So we have gone through the objects in our collections. We're getting stuff from the Royal Armouries and from Museum of London that augments it, but those objects, so we'll have that kind of thing like a touch piece. So people believed that because the king had touched something, it had magical healing powers. It's those kinds of elements which, when you look now, when you look back now, it's, oh my goodness, why did they believe that? But they did. So it's not for us to ridicule them. They believed that. It was part of their reality. So they believed. I mean, I previously worked in a cathedral, and one of the elements about that is it's not what we believe now, but it's what they believed then. And they did believe that unless you lived a good life, you were going to burn in hell. And that's what that window in the church says. So whilst you might not necessarily which king was in charge of you at the time, you certainly had a concern as to how you prayed, because it had a very, you knew you weren't going to last very long, and you would have to,
a real and practical, yeah. I'm struck with one of the things I think you've done really well is that so often with projects like this, the pre-publicity tends to be focused on the inanimate objects themselves. In other words, the photograph there of that I showed earlier of the roof trusses being stripped away and things like that. But in fact, the bulk of the photographs that I've seen, both on your website and you sent me one as well, are of reenactments of people dressed up in costume, wielding weapons and the like. It's a much more kind of personal touch. Is that weave its way all the way through your thinking at the centre?
Well, the publicity that we're doing has been a game of two halves. Up till Christmas, we were looking at publicising the building, because we had an awful lot of building work to do. So those were the stories we were picking out. Once you get after Christmas, it's about the call to action of there is going to be something that we've built that you will be able to come and visit, and what is it that we're putting in there, and what are the stories that we're starting to tell. So and as you know, I'm a complete technological novice, so if I try and get this to work, if I share this, well, hopefully you'll be able to see this film showing some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of the film.
Let me fix that screen. It may... Sometimes videos don't
work. Did you manage to get to see the still?
Yeah, it's flashing basically. It's not. Right. It's not playing. It's not.
But then it gives you an idea as to what the kind of technology is giving us. There we go. We're back on screen. It's the kind of thing which we can do with technology. But the key purpose of the technology is to tell stories rather than just technology for technology's sake. So that I can see it now. That's about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. How do I?
What we can do is very tantalising.
That's the idea. So we've tantalised you for when we release it, then you'll be able to see it properly.
But in a way, where I was sort of going with that thing about making it about people rather than objects, and using those, in this case, actors or whatever. I was wondering if you're also going to incorporate a lot of events during any one year with groups like the Sealed Knot and those other groups who recreate these events, around the town and tied in with the centre, and do some storytelling that way as well.
Yeah, when we're looking to be opening around the early May bank holiday, we're bringing the English Civil War Society. They're going to be looking at the castle end of the town. The Sealed Knot are looking at the sconce, because at Newark,
What's the scones?
the sconce is the Dutch word for fort, and in Newark, for our sins, or the sins of our predecessors, we have the best preserved Civil War earthwork in the country. So that makes it kind of probably the best one in Europe and therefore the world, because it's one of those kind of quirks of history. When Charles ordered Newark to surrender, it was kind of May. Plague is a summer disease, and plague was just starting to break out in the town. The Scots knew this, and the parliamentarians knew this. So once the Scots gently moved up to Newcastle with Charles, the parliamentarians came in, and usually they would completely obliterate the defences. They would slight the castle, they would dig over all the earthworks and make the ground flat. They came into Newark, they blew up one barrel of gunpowder in the castle. They issued an edict saying everybody from roundabout must come into Newark and demolish these defences, which they will do with a song in their heart because we are the just cause. And then they legged it because the town was full of plague. Of course, the locals thought, hang on, there's no overseers here, so they all legged it. So you can plot the relief of the siege of Newark through all the plague deaths peaking in towns and villages outside Newark days later. So we have this tremendous earthwork fortification, which is, to its original height, is the best preserved one in Europe. So the Sealed Knot will be doing their thud and bash and history recreation down there. The English Civil War Society will be doing it at the other end of town at the castle, and then in the huge market square in the middle of town they will come together for drilling and parades and all that kind of stuff. So we're taking over the town for those 2 days. And then because we have this large hall within the Tudor building, we'll be able to do that kind of living history stuff throughout the high days and holidays. And some of our volunteers or active reenactors will be able to do musket drill and that kind of, being able to kind of touch and feel history, which brings it alive for so many people.
Sounds excellent. What do you think, Thomas?
I think it's amazing. How do I get an invite to this?
Funnily enough, we found you now, so you'll be there.
Don't worry, I found you too. One of the things that I want to know, and this is probably being far too geeky, but what of the fabric of the building is still going to be on show? When we see that picture of the timbers of that roof exposed, I think that looks spectacular. But I bet you're going to cover it up now with a roof, aren't you? How much of it will we still see?
You'll see it from the inside, because the top of the Tudor roof was the dormitory, and inside that dormitory there's graffiti that goes back to about 1608. So part of the visitor experience will be getting into that space, that refurbished and restored space, to be able to see the graffiti. And the kind of vision up there is that there'll be a sound. It'll be a very light interpretation. They'll have soundscape of kind of pupils reciting their kind of Greek and Latin homework and that kind of thing. Hopefully not the sounds of them scratching into the plastic, because that would be bad. But it's that kind of idea. And because we've got these historic buildings which we're stitching together with a modern concrete, glass and steel box, effectively, which we've put the lift in and the staircases, you'll be able to get up to that Tudor walling, and that Victorian and Georgian walling will be enclosed within that box, so you'll be able to touch those Tudor walls as you're going around. It gets a really good way to orientate yourself around the buildings.
Excellent.
Yeah, that is good.
Is there, I imagine there's quite a buzz around the town now, because this is, it's a focal part of the town. Physically, it's a focal part of the town. And it's destined to be a large tourism resource. It'll bring a lot of people. Do you have any sense of sort of numbers you're hoping to attract into Newark? And I was wondering if how excited everybody is about it.
Yeah, the town is developing a huge buzz about it. I mean, our launch event was front page, full spread on the local newspaper when we publicised that, which was just before Christmas. We've just met with the local newspaper today. They're doing a 16-page pullout for us for when we open. It's that kind of it is the biggest thing that's going to be happening within the town, certainly in 2015. It's that kind of buzz.
You've already had open days, haven't you? You've already had open days where people can come in and see the progress
and see the building works. Yes, we have opened the doors up at those kind of key points, and we did the last one just after New Year, so that we could get people around at that final stage. And now it's like, now we're not showing people around because the builders really are cracking on to get it ready for opening. So it has got that buzz. We're working on a signage scheme so we can do the strategic road signage and point people to the right car parks, so that we manage that kind of visitor flow and expectation within the town, so that people can find their way in. There are the obvious gateways and then the obvious pathways across the town. It's a very compact town. You can walk. The sconce is seen locally as a bit of an outlier. It's a 15-minute walk. The car parks which are on the other side of town, long stay car parking for £2.60 all day. That's where I come from. That's a bargain. I'm sure most people would say thank you very much. We'll take your hand off at that. That's a 10-minute walk from the centre. So it's that kind of thing. We'll put the visitors.
And you're on the main line as well. I mean, a lot of people come in by train.
East Coast main line from London, I believe, takes hour and 20 minutes. It's that kind of.
And then you can, and then I imagine that the station is in the centre of town, and you walk out and you're there.
It's 9 minutes from the East Coast mainline station, and we're also in Newark's one of those special places which has got 2 train stations because we're on the Leicester to Lincoln line, the Nottingham to Leicester line. So it does east-west and the north-south. The East Coast mainline is a tremendous asset with a railway stop in it.
And what about entry itself? We should ask, actually, one of the people who I know was keen to either join us or watch was Brian Seaman. You and I, Michael, were talking about him earlier on today. And Brian is very much involved with access for people with any kind of accessibility issues. So first of all, in terms of accessibility, how accessible are you?
Well, that's one of the points of this glass, steel and concrete structure that's linking these buildings together. The historic building's got something like 7 different levels, so we will have a lift that's got 7 different levels on it, and a staircase so that those people that can do staircase can get up, so we can physically access all of the building.
Right the way up to the dormitory at the top.
Dormitory at the top will be open. We will be able to get wheelchair access to everything that's open to the public. There are 2 rooms on the whole site which you can't get a wheelchair into because they're intermediate mezzanine rooms which would need a separate lift to get into them. So those will be the non-accessible offices and storage spaces. So that's fine. But then in terms of accessibility, is not just about getting people in wheelchairs into a space. So for example, within the galleries, we're looking at well, there's the lighting, there's the font sizes, there's all that. But then it's about we will have stuff that people will be able to touch, so they can feel the textural differences between metal and pot, and even using historic pot to be able to say this is something that is 500 years old. This is what it feels like, so that people can access stuff in a different way. We'll also have the parcels company UPS. They've given our friends group a grant in order to be able to develop those kind of tactile maps, so that we'll be able to get people with vision impairment. It's those kinds of elements which you would expect a modern museum and centre to be able to deliver, because we want to be accessible for all, because that's how it works.
Shout out to UPS. Are there any other sponsors that should be recognised?
Well, the Heritage Lottery Fund, they've come in with £3.5 million. Newark and Sherwood District Council, they are the people we work for. They're the sponsoring body, and they've basically made up the difference in the funding. The County Council, Nottinghamshire County Council, they've put in a chunk of money, a lot of which has gone into the augmented reality trail, because that will increase the dwell time in the town, and it's a great tourism asset. But it's one of those tourism assets which can grow and grow and grow. So you can take it. It starts in Newark, but we also have the town of Southall, Southwell, just outside.
Which is where the surrender was.
Which is where the surrender was, and where the Minster is, and where the old palace was, slighted by the Scots afterwards, which has just been restored and opened up. And it's those kinds of linking together those heritage assets which make for a greater, dwell time and a greater reason for visitors to visit. As a kind of kind of fresh off the press, we've not publicised it. There's also a country house, literally, not more than 20 miles away from here, called Doddington Hall, and they've agreed to lend us a set of Civil War armour that they've got. Now, you walk around Doddington Hall, and it's in a box, and it's in a glass box on one of the staircases. It's open to the public, but it's got gloves, boots, buff coat, armour, breastplate, but it's also got the bullet hole in it that killed the guy that was wearing it, which is that kind of way that you touch history. Because most of these ones you see don't have that. They don't usually keep the ones with the bullet holes in. Those are the ones that get remodeled or melted down or remade into different ones. Yeah, it goes to the Royal Armies. They've got hundreds of them, and they're all pristine. But those are the ones where you can really touch history, and that's the kind of things that we're borrowing from them for the 6 months opening exhibition.
Oh, that's great. I think those touch history things are really important. You reminded me that back in the day, the National Maritime Museum had an exhibition based on Nelson and Trafalgar, and they managed to get from different collections Nelson's tunic with the bullet hole in it and the bullet. From another collection, and put them in the same case, and it has that same impact. Thomas, you must have seen similar things.
Yeah, that's people are going to. There was a time where people cut the gore out, but I think people are going to it now. There's an exhibition on in Germany at in the middle of this year, from some battle in the sort of equivalent in Germany's history, and. They're doing something very similar, bringing in the gory costumes that have got all the, all the fatal signs. So I think it's great. I think it's brilliant.
I agree. Michael, so finally, a couple of things. What does it cost to get in admission?
It's going to be £7 for adults, £6 for concessions. I think it's about £3 for children. Under fives will be free. That's for the day ticket price, and then we'll have an annual pass for those people that want to come back and see us more during the year, and that will be about half as much again, so it's about £10–11 for an adult. So
for a family driving into town and parking in the cheap car park, I mean, it's all cheap as chips.
Well, we think it represents excellent value for money. but yes, in terms of our locale, it's within the price bracket. It's not that kind of London prices, because we are. I mean, I've been in the industry for 25 years. There is a London pricing, and then you have to work within your locale. For what we offer, it's going to be a good experience. It's going to be a good half day where you can you can do the exhibitions. We've got the Civil War Gallery, National Civil War Centre. We've also got a local museum element. We've got temporary exhibitions, which we'll come and tell you about when we're allowed to, because those are kind of going to be very interesting. And then you've got the trail, so you've got a good kind of 3 or 4 hours worth of entertainment value for money. And it's like I kind of went around Harry Potter World, and they said the record is somebody managed to get around it in 30 minutes, and somebody spent 13 hours there. And if you were the kind of person that did every interactive and went through everything that we did to the nth degree, yes, you'd probably need the annual ticket, because it's going to take you over one day to do it. But for those people that are in leisure mode, they will enjoy what we're doing, and hopefully have their interest piqued in this period of history, which, when you start really getting into it, and I wasn't a Civil War nut when I came to do this job, but in terms of getting into it, it's got that kind of aspect of, you think, yeah, that's still happening today. There's those kind of echoes through history as to why did we fight, what happened. I say to people, it's great that we got our military dictatorship out of the way in the 17th century, rather than lots of people had it in the 19th and 20th centuries. It's that kind of one of the things that blessed us as a nation, I think.
Brilliant.
Will your day ticket allow people to go in and out on that day?
On that day,
because that's quite a popular thing now. Particularly given you're in a town. People might want to go out for lunch and then go back in afterwards. So is that still one ticket? Yeah,
it will be one ticket, because we don't have because we're in a town. One of the things that I looked at was there's no point in trying to shoehorn a cafe in. Our core business is about the National Civil War Centre and the experience, and fill the space with that and make that work really well. There are 20. Newark, whilst it's a small town, has something in the order of 27 cafes. So plus the restaurants, so you've got plenty of you've got the full range of choice, from the greasy spoon through to not quite the 5-star restaurant, but the really good food if you want that for your lunch. So go and do that, and then you'll be able to come back in. You'll be encouraged to go around the town on the trail. It's within, and what has to be said, I mean, I worked for English Heritage covering the north of England. Newark is a lovely town. It's got fantastic built heritage, and it really does look the business.
And it sounds as if, and this is appropriate these days when we think about responsible travel, that it sounds as if it'll bring a lot of revenue and interest to the town and to local people.
Yeah, I mean, we're working with the local accommodation providers. Whilst we don't have big hotels, there are around 350 to 400 beds within the town. So we're working with those people to make sure that they're aware of us and publicising across their websites. And if we can fill up more of those beds more of the time, if we've got it's on great road transport routes as well as rail transport routes, we can get people here that uses as little kind of carbon footprint as possible. Then they're not using planes, or kind of jetting away, and those kinds of that domestic tourism. I think, the staycation isn't going to be going away anytime soon. I think a lot of people, having discovered what the UK has to offer, may then go for, well, instead of having 2 foreign breaks, they will maybe we'll go back to the foreign break, but that UK tourism, having discovered it, and on a sunny day, it's as great as anywhere. I mean, I'm biased. I don't have a passport, so I don't. My staycation is all the time. My idea of a day in the sun is to go up to Scotland. So it has that opportunity for people to do the day visit, but then just up the railway line and road from us is Lincoln, where the Magna Carta is going to be unveiled.
So, and they're doing some fantastic work there as well, rebuilding the castle and
it's our contractors that are on that job as well. So we've looked at that. Good. And you've got the Richard III Centre down in Leicester. The East Midlands through that A46 corridor has got kind of getting towards that critical mass of things to do, which is great for the day visitors and also for inbound tourism.
Fantastic. Thomas, anything else you wanted to ask?
No, I'm just looking forward to the day it opens. As I said to you earlier, I did a blog post at the beginning of the year on 3 new museums that are opening around the world, and it got a lot of traction. People really enjoyed it, and this was one of them. I think a lot of people are looking forward to it.
Michael, thank you ever so much for telling us all about it and for your evident enthusiasm for the project. You must have, I mean, for you personally, there must be, one particular thing, one artifact, or one aspect of it that you feel particularly excited about. Something you think, oh gosh, I can't wait till they see this.
It's just there's too many. I mean, when I send you the link through to the trailer, that was the filming that we've done just takes it to another level, and we know that when we'll have it'll be a small cinema. It'll only have 40 seats in it. The screen's about 4.5 meters across, and when you get people and you immerse them in that story, it's an amazing story. We've got a ring that's got "Let no calamity separate our amity," and that's believed to have been given within family members to say, doesn't matter what happens within the Civil War, we will still be friends or brothers. There's so many. I mean, we've got a collection, a hoard. The Civil War was a perfect period for hoarding coins because you didn't want them to be in the bank. So we've got this bag, what was a jug of coins, which has got these gold coins from the start of Charles's reign, and you've got to think that somebody stashed those, bricked them up within a wall within their house, and never came back for them. And those coins represent, Charles's high point. These are solid gold coins, by the way. And then during the siege of Newark, they were hammering flat silver and cutting them into diamond-shaped coins because the money had run out and people were not wanting to take IOUs. So it's that kind of thing of how did you survive as a society with by making your own money. It's that whole kind of thing of it's an unimaginable time but yet you can still kind of understand how people, the kind of things people are going through.
Brilliant.
It's going to be great.
I think it's great. Looking forward to it as much as Thomas. Yeah, I think it'll be fantastic. Okay, let's leave it there. Talking about your cinema, by the way, reminds me that Ron put up. He said it's not a question. He said he's Chromecasting this hangout at home, which basically means he's taking the images on the computer and putting it on his great big flat screen TV. So he's been watching us warts and all. Thank you for that, Ron. Next week will be a short edition. I've got to go to a function in the centre of London, something like 6:30, so I'm going to run it for about half an hour. I'm hoping to be talking about the Asturias again, largely because I'm going to be joined by Catherine Crone from Headwater Holidays, who specialise in adventure cycling, gentle adventure, gentle cycling, gentle walking holidays, and they've picked on the Asturias as a new area for them. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm sure we'll be talking about other things. I'm sure Malcolm will be back to tell us about what's happening in the aviation world. So do join me then. But like I say, it will be a short edition. And for now, bye for now.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Thank you.